practicing being old helps you become old. That if you
Hmm.
just wake up one day and say, why can't I lift this amount of weights? Why can't I go out and run
Yeah.
this mile? Why am I not as virile in bed? All of the things that come with aging. It'll probably kill you. The quality of your relationships is not defined by the length of their time. Quality of your life is not defined by the length of it. It's what you do with it in the moment you're in it.
Chris, welcome back to the show.
Long time no see.
Yeah, we had our first podcast in 2018, I think, which is 7 years ago. And many people might not be aware of you because my channel has grown a lot since that time. So maybe you can introduce yourself, as many people call you the most connected man on Earth.
Yeah, so my name's Chris Dancy. Got a chance to go back and listen to the show. We'll talk about that in a minute. I am known as the world's most connected person. In 2008, I was turning 40 years old, and was having a lot of health issues. I was about, oh my gosh, I don't know in kilos. I used to be able to do this really fast, but I was over 320 US pounds.
Mm.
And then maybe you can do the kilos while I'm doing the rest of it. I smoked a couple packs of cigarettes a day. I'd been on antidepressants at that point for 22 years and benzodiazepines. I drank too much. I used a lot of recreational drugs, a lot of crazy stuff, but I was
Mm.
doing great at work. And I thought to myself, gosh, I'm 40. It's going to soon be 2010. What does the world look like in the future? And then I made this crazy assumption that in the future, there were no screens, no keyboards, and everything just reacted to you. So I started writing little recursive programs that when I touched my computer or I was on my phone, I was doing anything in my life, if I was connected to the internet, having that write an entry into a Google Calendar. And from 2008 to 2011, this Google Calendar collected thousands and thousands and thousands of little data points. Like if I were to go someplace or eat something, because I was logging food at that point, things like that. And it really remarkably changed my life. And by 2012, so 4 years into it, I had completely changed my friend group, my physicality, my mind. And then I was at a conference. Someone sitting behind me saw my calendar automatically creating entries, and it was a writer from a magazine called Wired, which is a big tech magazine. It was really big in the 90s and 2000s. I think they're still around. I don't know. I'm sure they are. I just don't read a lot of magazines. And that was it. I mean, a story came out, and then a week later I was on TV, and then a week later I was on the cover of Business Week, or that was like 6 months later, and then around the world for TED Talks, and then I got a book deal to write a book back in 2016 called Don't Unplug. Did a couple TV shows, literally toured the world multiple times about talking about my journey. And then I met you, and I think I was actually over in the Nordics doing a
Yeah.
road show in 2018. And then, yeah, and then of course the pandemic happened, and I didn't travel as much, but I just kind of took those skills and moved them into other areas to apply toward population. So that's it, kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good visuals. I give good Google if you just put in most connected.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So your I guess main transformation, or not transformation, but your tool was using technology to essentially hack your time and hack your health with different self-quantification technologies and tools. So yeah, how did you use technology to lose weight and get healthier? Because I'd say a lot of people just use technology to counter calories or track their weight or track their sleep or something like that. But you took it a bit beyond that, and you had a lot more, I guess, more detailed approach with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, just tracking calories, you're going to lose anywhere from 40 to 60% more weight than not tracking calories. So that's just there's studies after studies after studies just writing down what you eat if you even want to track the calories. But for me, it was more of a holistic approach of looking at all the ways this data could feed back into my life. I had is it okay if I share something with you?
Yeah, of course.
Let me see if I can just bring this up for you. I don't know if it'll work. We'll try it. Um, but like if you just take my calendar from that time, right? So this is like 2012 or 13. I can't remember which day this one's from. What I was doing was I was color coding the entry. So it wasn't that, logging my food. Obviously, that would help me be more aware of it in a lot of ways, just seeing the calories and macronutrients, etc. But how it related to other behaviors. So, there was always specific people or places I was hanging out when I was more prone to eat poorly. It wasn't just going to a fast food restaurant. So that was allowed me to really take the next step, which was saying, what would it take to create that kind of the conditions around if I wanted to eat poorly or I didn't want to eat poorly. So simple things like if I really wanted fast food, I couldn't run at that point, but I had to walk or run to get it. If I wanted something not so bad, but still not very healthy, I could take my bike. But if I wanted something absolutely delicious, I could drive to it. And then just, you know, I have to be honest, I mean, some of the people I hang out with, they only ate certain ways, right? So you don't see that, because you think you're just hanging out with friends. So for me, it was really about seeing how a life comes together, if that makes sense. Um, but then like really dumb things, like just simple hack routines and I have a lot of this nowadays, it's just embedded in everything. But like if I was on my computer and I was in a conference call long before they were really normal, but they were still we were doing Skype back then, it wasn't this. Um, and I spoke loud, just a sensor on my desk. Still got one to this day. They're just a lot smaller.
Mm,
Um, would dim the lights naturally if I started talking too loud or too fast. So, you know, I think a lot can be said about my story about using technology, but it was really about self-awareness. It was taking everything that was in my life and making it a mirror. So it wasn't just a piece of data, it was a piece of data that turned into a behavior. Does that make sense?
mm. Yeah, gotcha. So you were using certain rules in your daily life to help with,
Hundreds,
yeah.
hundreds. I would geofence the bar. So I
Mhm.
went to the bar and I was there past, 15 minutes. I'd get a text message from myself. At 1 hour, a text message that got sent to my bartender I knew who wrote real well.
Right.
An hour after that, my partner would get sent a text message. I mean, saying, "Go get me."
Mhm.
I geofenced the mall. I did Google Glass long before I had, regular. I have the Meta glasses now, but it would tell me to slow down my spending because my credit card was connected to my system, and if I kept spending, I would cut my own credit card off. It was radically different, but I think again, most people look at one part of their lives, and I saw my life as a collection of feedback mechanisms in everything I did, whether it was my car or my home or a Fitbit at that point.
Mhm.
With the greatest information really coming from how I spoke, how I behaved and the ability to capture that, we had it because we had small cameras that I wore for a long time that photographed every few seconds. Um, and there were some wristbands called the capture that would capture what I was saying from time to time, but it was all high friction. I'd have to tap on it to start a session with it. And of
Mm.
course, all of that's, today you can just wear a pendant, that just captures everything you say all day long. So
Right.
it's so much simpler now to do what I did, but
Mm.
I was early.
Yeah, you were kind of living in the future with
I feel
uh, with
well,
uh, what we would nowadays consider archaic technology or less advanced technology, and in the future, in the next 20, 30, 50 years, is going to be even more obsolete in comparison. So yeah,
yeah,
in the future, we will have a lot of tracking devices that track your heartbeat, track your energy expenditure, track your mood, body temperature, all those things, and that give you direct feedback about your
in real
biology.
time.
Yeah,
In
so
real
that's going to
time.
happen in the future, but you were doing it already with the
Yeah.
available means in
Yeah. I mean, if you go back to
2010.
2000, now almost 20 years ago.
Mm,
So
yeah,
yeah.
gotcha.
And
Um,
today it's and the other great thing, I mean, obviously with the rise of, semantic AI, having almost 20 years worth of data about my life that can be queried in real time is a tremendous advantage.
mhm,
It's I've been able to nowadays do things as provocative as allow my spouse to talk or query me. how would I answer something? I've long maintained that, you know, death of your physical body is just that. It's your essence and what you left to how you behaved is still around, right? It's in the people that you grew up with or the way that they changed because they knew you. And I just think, a more disembodied set of ways to speak is something that's completely usable. We
Mhm.
call it bearbot, so it's kind of neat. And I've cloned my video self. So a lot of times, if I'm asked to do a commercial for an event I'm going to speak at or something, I'll just have the AI me say it, and they don't know the difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the things that you find most useful nowadays? Let's say one of the best tools or some certain of these routines or cues that make life easier or make your health tracking easier.
I don't think there's a whole I mean, the hard part is nowadays, a lot of the tools have become kind of ecosystems onto themselves, right? So back if you go 2010, 2011, 2012, when, we had really simple tracking tools like a Fitbit or like that capture I was talking about, their APIs were open, so you could really connect them to other things through Zapier or IFTT super simply. Nowadays, the ecosystems are a lot more closed than they ever were. So I think it's harder to get information out of my phone and into the system I use now. It's a whole thing where it has to run this routine at night and pull it out of the health system and then send it over to my system. It's not hard. The good news is with things like vibe coding and you know uh, super simple SaaS databases like an Airtable or something, you can create these routines, these really robust routines that I used to do with just a little bit of coding experience. And now with tools like Zeit or it's Fill Out is the company, but their web tool Zeit, it'll create whole backends for you. So if you say, hey, create a backend that can house this type of data, pull these sources for this data every so often, and then give me a web interface for it. I mean, it's
Mm.
just amazing.
Gotcha. Do you have any favorite prompts or something like that for, let's
Oh
say,
my
chat,
gosh.
even something simple as a ChatGPT that people can use?
Oh, I mean, there's so many. Well, I mean, for me, I mean, I have a very custom system now that runs. I'll pull it up real quick. That runs a large majority of my life, but all of the different, I would, prompts and what have you are just kind of basically embedded in it. Let me see if I can find a copy. There it is. There's one. So it's going to be. I'll make it smaller so it's easier to see. Um, But yeah, so it pulls out, what I'm saying throughout the day, little journal entries, grabs a lot of biometrics. At the end of the day, it'll grab all this, grab spending from my credit card. If I've got places I'm scheduled to go, I'll just go back a few days. This will be easier. Um, it automatically summarizes my feelings 3 times a day and gives me a rating. This is where all the biometric stuff goes. Like I said, the places. If I interact with specific people that I have a bad experience with, they get tagged there. What I got done well, people can make you upset. Um,
Yeah.
uh, and then pictures I favorite automatically get thrown in here. And at the beginning of each day, it kind of gives me an overview based on my entire life on what I should be thinking about that day. Think of it as kind of like a wake up coach. And at the end of the day, it kind of looks at that day and then aligns it to like the places I really should be focusing on more. So in this case, this day, I literally didn't get out and get any exercise at all, and I ate way too much. Um, so I like it. It but, for me, and like the last time we talked about hacking time. It's always been about like looking at my time in the larger context. So I have
Mhm.
a magical AI subroutine, and a lot of the prompts that are in here have to reference my entire life, right? So I've got this coach thing, like you saw that earlier, that just goes through and shows me like that morning's coach. But then I have a whole magical, and it'll create affirmations based on my life that it sends me throughout the day. So it'll text me this and say, hey, don't forget, this is really important to you. Kind of like a super high level of what I was doing before.
Mhm.
Um, but the magic is kind of cool. So I actually taught it to do tarot, so
Mhm.
it'll go through and do tarot based on that day, and then give me a little tarot reading.
Mhm.
It's gonna sound funny, but I mean, that's really fun. And then I built an entire deity subroutine. So basically, if I want to summon a god from, basically any of the world's great religions and pray to it, it pulls in the data information, and then the prompt automatically inserts the summoning, and then you can just ask the god a question. So, tell me how my interview's going so far, talking about my quantified life. And then it'll go ahead and you'll see that it'll actually send up, you know, please summon Bridget, the Celtic goddess associated with fire and sun. It'll then do the summoning, and then she'll appear. And then it'll go ahead and Bridget, whatever god I have, will go ahead and answer me.
Mm. Yeah. So it's listening through that pendant that you have,
Yeah.
what you're saying, and collects the
Mm.
information, and the AI is creating those feedback about it.
Yeah. So, I mean,
What's that?
it's come a long way from where I first started. I mean, the fact
Right.
that I've got a pantheon, and it's doing tarot for me, and, it controls the house, like, my entire house is also connected, but instead of being connected to me like it used to be, now it syncs to the seasons. So,
Mm,
throughout the year, the lights, the sounds, we've got smells and things just slowly move to the next one. It's
mm,
a it's wild.
yeah. What is that pendant call, if people wanna know?
Limitless AI.
Limitless AI, okay.
Yeah, I think the website is limitless.ai. Don't quote me, but if you Google limitless pendant, it'll come right up.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the hardware is one thing because there's also just a PC piece that'll just sit on your PC and listen to you.
Mhm.
Um, and they've got the whole service around that. It'll read your calendar, but then they've got the hardware that
Yeah.
it's not always in front of your PC, obviously.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it feels like we're entering, some sort of a technology renaissance that, let's say, the years 2000 to 2020 were kind of the dark ages of technology, where we were exposed to mostly the negative side effects of technology and social media, etc. But now, with AI becoming more advanced, these technologies and tracking devices becoming more advanced, slowly we're able to again, not only improve our environment, like you said, that you have a house that automatically changes according to the seasons to be, let's say, more attuned to your natural biology.
Exactly.
The light, even the circadian rhythms, like automatically changing the light.
And I then what we also do because the type of light throughout the year changes. I mean,
Hmm.
this from where you're from, right? So it looks a lot different. The sun, the midday sun in summer versus the midday sun uh,
Yeah.
in winter. So yeah, I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, I still can't get over how far we've come. I'm almost 60 years old, so thinking that how different the world is going to be in just 5 years when it's
Hmm.
2030. I don't think people are ready. I really don't.
Yeah. When do you think we'll have like a Jarvis, like an actual AI Jarvis in our, maybe not a phone, but a watch or a necklace or whatever thing?
I mean, I've said this since 2015. I can't imagine a lot of people are using smartphones like they use them now within 5 years. I can't imagine smartphones being
Hmm.
like something that everyday people would want to use. Considering everything that's happening with insertables and wearables.
Mm,
I why would you?
right.
Just considering like between my watch, my pendant, and my glasses. I've got a whole ecosystem of data biology and behavior collection algorithms that are running that just 10 years ago would look like I was from the future. So again, if you had something even smaller, to your point, a Jarvis or something, that could coach you throughout the day and actually act on your behalf, more
Hmm.
agentic toward you, like, hey, can I help you with that? Or hey, you might consider this. I mean, how is that not 2 years from now from being, you know, pretty normal? Within 3 to 4 years, being like, oh, a lot of people are using it, and within five, it's just you. I don't know. I used to say if you're using a cell phone in 2030, you didn't make the cut. But we'll see.
Yeah, well, of course, there's people who are not willing to adopt new technologies, and there's people who will adopt them. So I think let's say the gap between the two will be increasing exponentially as well. That as
Well,
the technology becomes more advanced.
I would even struggle with that if you really think about it, because I mean, if you look at life in America right now, a lot of Americans, for as polarized and divided and awkward as our country's become, are have adopted new technology. It's not that they didn't.
Mm,
They're but it's more like the technology adopted them.
hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's really the big difference in 2030. It's not who didn't use the technology, it's who's being used by it. The same thing we've been saying for the longest time about social media and things. I still can't believe we're still having that conversation. Here where I live in New York, they just banned cell phones in school. Are phones allowed in schools where you are?
I haven't paid attention,
Yeah,
but
I did.
I would, you obviously can't use them during class, but you can
Yeah,
still use them in the recess.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
But in term
I think it's just I was asked to go speak at a school a couple weeks ago in Buffalo, New York, and the whole state has just banned cell phones. And then one of the parents said, you're very connected and blah blah. What do you think about this?" I said, "I think it's a great idea if it were 2013, but I think in 2025, taking away cell phone from a child in 10th grade is abuse. That they
Mm,
don't know how to function without it."
right.
So it's going to be interesting to see what happens
Yeah.
uh, with things like that.
I want to take a quick break to let you know about my favorite wellness devices, which are the Bond Charge red light therapy devices. You've probably seen many of your favorite longevity influencers using these red light therapy devices, but do they actually work? Yes, they do. Red light therapy has been shown to have many benefits on skin anti-aging, hormone optimization, pain management, and even exercise performance. I use my device every day for 15 minutes, especially during the winter months when there's not much sunlight. It increases my energy in the morning and makes my skin glow. Just check out the testimonials on the Bond Charge website for the before and after pictures of other people. Most red light therapy devices don't have the right wavelengths of light, which might mean you're not getting the claimed benefits. Bond Charge uses the exact wavelengths of light used in research, and they also have near-infrared light that's beneficial to the joints. Head over to bondcharge.com and use the code SIIM, SIIM, for a 15% discount.
Obviously, there's gonna be, like, implants, and, in some countries, you can already have a implant for, bank transactions or key cards, etc. Um, and I think 2 years ago or something like that, there was the first human patient who got the Neuralink. Um, when do you think something like that will become more widespread adopted?
I still think. I mean, obviously, implants. I mean, I'm a big fan of Sweden. I spent half the year in Sweden, most of the 2010s. I still think things like Neuralink are probably a little bit further out from mainstream.
Mm,
Uh, yeah, obviously you'll have biohackers. You've got you know your famous cyborgs that have like Neil Haberson has had like an implant in his head forever, right? Sensing colors.
right.
Um, uh, but I can't imagine that becoming what I call pedestrian. Like,
Hmm.
you would just go to the Apple store for an implant. I just don't see that sort of thing happening. Um, yeah, well, not in my lifetime.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's gonna be medical grade for a really long time. I think there will be some people who are very specialized in their particular line of work, scientists or quants, who will need that just because of the degradation in the ability to communicate when they
Hmm.
can is is so much slowed down with typing or speaking that having a link directly to it would make a lot more sense for some jobs. But I think that's going to be highly specialized and probably 2040 at the soonest.
Mm. Yeah, something like uh, special forces operations or some policemen or surgeons. Those things will probably, you can they can. I mean, maybe we don't need implants if we get very good glasses or spectacles, so that the
Yeah, and
glasses
then again,
become
I
good
think
enough.
a lot of brain activity is sent through electrical impulses in your arm. If you remember the Myo band, I had one for a long time. It
Hmm.
could sense what you would do with your hand. The Apple Watch does the same thing now. So again, I still think an eye movement is a big trigger for what's going on in your brain. I still think we'll have a lot more low friction ways of getting neurological feedback into the environment before we chipped.
Gotcha.
Haven't even scratched the surface yet of what we can do without
Yeah.
the old screws in the head.
Yeah. Um, One thing we discussed last time was hacking time,
Yeah.
and I find it actually very interesting because time is obviously, the most I would say precious resource we have, and that essentially how long we live is a representation of time, of how
Yeah.
long we've been alive and how long we will be expected to live. And time perception can also change, or it can vary a lot between individuals. Sometimes time goes by very fast, sometimes it's slow. And what we don't want is to just not only waste time, obviously we can waste time on social media and doing a lot of other stupid things, but just we don't want to have the time go fast. We want to savor the good moments and enjoy our life, and have time go slow when we're enjoying the time. And I don't think
I
we
love I hate to interrupt you. I love the fact this is everything we were talking about in 2018.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a good to maybe recap as well, that okay, how can we, let's say, extend our time, that make time feel go slower, or not have time go that fast? Because one interesting insight of or research I've seen is that time, the subjective perception of time, speeds up as we get older. So
Yeah.
that in your 60s, the years go by faster. It feels that it goes faster through various reasons, like brain aging, and you become more accustomed to your daily routines, etc. But we don't want that. We don't want necessarily our time to go that fast. So what can we do here with the help of technology?
I mean, obviously, I mean, this is, I always say to people who pay attention to my life with any bit of diligence, not as a novelty, because I think it's very easy to find me and my life is interesting or novel, or I've had every superlative and adjective used about me. But I think people with a more of a discerning eye will notice that, literally between 2008 and 2015 was really about biohacking and hacking and understanding and changing my physicality. But 15, to 19, possibly even 20 was really about the time. I was literally doing a time tour when I was last on your show. Because to your point, I felt that understanding uh, your subjective experience of time is the most important thing you can do. It's long before you hack anything out, you have to understand how you perceive the world around you through the lens of time. Your brain does it because of circadian rhythm, and circadian rhythm drives everything, right? So, like, if you don't really have, you obviously you can't talk to your circadian rhythm. You can through, you know, you can ambiently talk to it, but you can't like talk to your suprachiasmatic nucleus, the thing that controls the your brain and when it releases hormones. But after that, I went through, stage three, or what I call it, which is just more of the esoterica of the data. Like, how do you do these things and create interesting things with it? One of the things I did when I was exploring your point about the subjective version of time was try to help people understand that what they were doing with their technology changed their perception of time, right? And a lot of people are like, what does that even mean? And I had this great little chart that I created at that point, and it was really about understanding. Let me see if I can go ahead and share this. Kind of like a bunch of different apps that you would possibly come in contact with using a phone or using any type of technology, and how they made your mind consider something. So temporary apps like, where you get a security code sent to you, or Snapchat where things just disappear, that live just forward in the ephemery of the future. They have a very anxiety uh, provoking part of their nature. You just go a little further out into what I call the soon, right? Maps that tell you how far you are from something, how close you're getting, or reminders of appointments, also very anxiety provoking. But if you go way out, a little further in the future, and you look at, things like a Google listing, it'll show you when something's busy, not as anxiety provoking, because you can actually plan that. So there's a part of your future that's very much in your control that we don't really think about because we just take it for granted because it's just past the anxiety provoking part of the next 3 hours. And then you've got, super far future, your death and what happens after that and how you deal with that. But your brain responds completely differently when you use technology referring to the recent, right? So that's kind of like the temporary from the future, but just in the past. And those are like when you use your phone to like look for an app and it shows you things you've recently used, or the things it thinks you want to use based on patterns. Or a lot of apps will show you what you've done, like, hey, on this day you did these 5 things, or apps that like really sum up your whole life, or like photographs. And I think once you kind of get your head around that, using apps in a very deliberate way to, like you said earlier, as you get older, things seem to speed up. Spending more time using things that slow your brain down, are super helpful. For someone like me, I have a lot of countdown apps. So, in the future, this is coming up, but why I love them is they also show me how far things are in the past. So I like watching things go away real slow that I was looking forward to in the future. Like maybe it's a concert this fall. Like it'll just count. I've got a bunch of them on my phone right now, right? But I've been doing countdowns and count ups for the longest time because I think they're so important for helping you get a hold of your brain and how your brain works. Um, but I love watching something that I knew was far away in the future kind of arrive, and then slowly go and watch it get farther out. So this is just I can't really show that because the screen's not gonna, but, it's like
Mm.
looking forward to my, my 25,000 days is, 4,000 days from now, right? So, like, weird little
Right.
esoteric kind of big things like that. A big party at my had at my house was, 152 days ago on April 16th. I love that. This makes sense what I mean by, like,
Yeah.
changing how you look at time, but you have to do it every day because everything around you is programming you to live in this next few hours,
Mhm.
which will make you so anxious.
Right. So looking at these, okay, um, in 5 days or in let's say 45 days, I'm going to this travel or this trip, whatever. So every
Yep,
day you see it, okay, 45, 44, 43, 40, 39, etc. Looking at it every day slows down your perception of
100% slows it down.
right.
Because it seems like, "Oh my gosh, I was just planning it," people who plan trips. I'm like, "Oh, I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
just planning the trip, now we're on it. Oh my god, it was 2 years ago." Again, it's not that it came that fast or it was that long ago, you didn't pay attention to any of it happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did something for Spotify, and I don't know what year it was. I was visiting Spotify's offices in Stockholm, one of their offices. I'm sure they got millions of those offices. But I did something for them when they asked me about how they could help people with time. Um, where I basically took the 2 types of time. So we live in chronological time, which is the what we all know, days, weeks, hours, minutes. But before that, before we had clocks and calendars and we just kind of lived with, the land, the sun, the seasons, we had this thing called they called it Kairos time. But I went ahead and mapped all of their ability to manipulate someone's feelings of time in their interface for them when I was visiting their office once. And they loved it. Because again, how they recommend music to you is based a lot on behavior and mood and what you've been playing and actually what they wanna do with that is what interface they express it in. So
Mm,
temporal interfaces are a big, big, big deal for me.
gotcha. Yeah, so time feels like it goes by faster if you're not paying attention. If you're lost, I guess, yeah, like distracted or not paying attention to the
Well,
present
I mean, you
moment.
could also be hyper focused, right? So not
Mhm.
paying attention, time travels super fast, but hyper focus travels super fast too.
Mm,
If you're
right.
working on something that you're really in, I mean, you end up
Yeah.
with a bladder infection because you needed to pee, but you totally forgot because your whole biology was focused. I mean, every bit of energy.
Yeah, that's the
That's
flow state, right?
get so yeah, flow, 100%, right? There's
Mm,
no time in flow. But people like and then people want that. I'm like, I love flow state. I love that feeling, but I think it's kind of like heroin. You have to have the smallest hits of it because
mm, yeah,
flow is also very isolating for you when it comes to your ability to socialize. And we know if there's, if the number one thing is, you know, your ability to understand and process time, number two will be your process people.
yeah.
Biohackers are very lonely people.
Yeah. Um, what about meditation? So, like, I often feel that, meditation does speed up time, or it feels like it, I don't know, like it creates this weird state that, if you're in a meditative state, you seem to come out of it and you don't really remember what was going on that much. Or, it's yeah, like the time does, in my experience, feel like it goes by faster if you're meditating in like a really deep meditative state. Um, but meditation in some ways can help you to also be more attentive in your everyday life. You become more mindful about things. And if you slow down, you become, let's say, mindful in the present moment. I'm currently standing. I can feel the floor underneath my feet, and I can sense certain things, light, sound. And if I become super attentive of that, become very mindful of that, then it does slow down the time. But if I were to be in a completely meditative state, then it would go by faster. So, what is there like some sweet spot of, okay, meditation is good in some situations? Do I need to be always mindful, or yeah? What is your thoughts?
Mindfulness is a hard one because, in 2014, I started meditating pretty heavy and doing isolation tanks. Um, and by 2015, I was doing, 10-day silent retreats. By 2016, I was, hardcore meditating a couple hours a day. Um, you know, first, hands down, there's nothing more important you can do than have a relationship with your mind. So meditating in any way that you feel, there's a million ways to do it now. Well, there's a million apps, there's a million different, mechanisms that'll help you do it. Um, but I will say, I just want to put this out there because I don't think I ever was clear enough about this. I do think there's a line you can cross with meditating where, there's a phrase in that we call the dark night of the soul. Are you familiar with
Mhm.
this?
Yeah.
Where you get to a point where it can become almost terrifying to be as aware of awareness. Now there's a point past it, right? You can, but a lot of people, I especially think today, people who don't meditate or have never meditated, it's not something you're just going to start and I know a lot of people, but you have to be real careful because if you're used to being distracted, working with your mind can feel like an assault. Um, in the opposite way, giving someone your full attention can feel like an assault. I know for me, when I work with the public or I'm speaking to someone or I'm in a social environment where I have a lot of people interacting with me, I have to almost pretend to be distracted so they don't feel overwhelmed. Because if you give someone your full attention and you know what attention is, it feels uncomfortable to the receiver. Does that make sense to you?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
like if you're being intimate with someone and you look in their eyes, that connection where your eyes just lock.
Hmm.
That's mindfulness, right? That's that's
Right.
that's using the mindfulness and awareness of that moment. Yeah, sorry if that's creepy.
Yeah. Um, what about daily routines? So, if you, let's say, the one of the reasons the time goes by faster is that your brain wants to preserve energy, and your brain doesn't care about how fast time goes by you for you subjectively. Um, just let's say following the same routines every day, eating the same things and following the same path to work, walking the same roads, etc. I would imagine there is a lot of energy efficiency there, so that you save a lot of energy, and your brain, you pay less attention to the things that you do every day. Like most people have the same routines. They walk the same route without even thinking about it. They automatically do it, so they're skipping steps in terms of paying attention there. So I would imagine that does speed up time as well.
I mean, it's the law of energy conservation, right? So it
Right.
doesn't really matter whether it's your body or your brain. Everything's always trying to conserve energy.
Yeah.
Um, and 100%, I mean, routine allows you to extend your life longer, right? But it also
Mhm.
allows you to not pay attention to your life. So, like everything, it's a fine balancing act, right? If you pay too much attention to it, you can go crazy. But if you don't pay enough attention to it, it goes too fast.
Mhm.
For me, I personally feel like I've become really skilled at that balance of just aware enough to be with the moment, and not so much that it overwhelms me. I think the hardest part about any type of journey, whether it's physically biohacking or spiritually biohacking or mentally biohacking, um, is just working with yourself enough that you don't go through people too fast, right? There's not enough talk about, in my opinion, sociality, like, being social with others as it
Mhm.
relates to at what point are you allowed to dispense with people, right? A lot of people like, I've got lifelong friends, or I hear a lot, people are so lonely and they can't find friends. And, you know, there's there's a real pathology about finding and keeping friends that we have as a species, as if it's some type of medal of honor to say, I've got all these friends and I've had them forever. And the reality is that's not healthy and that's not true. To find a good friend and be with someone that you admire and you respect for the briefest amount of time, maybe it's an hour while you're sharing, a bus station conversation. Some of the best friends I've ever had have been people who didn't last more than an hour at an airport when we were talking to each other, right?
Mm.
And I think that's important for people to know. Like, the quality of your relationships is not defined by the length of their time. The quality of your life is not defined by the length of it. It's
Mhm.
what you do with it in the moment you're in it. Because listen, no one's going to remember your drama from last week. a week from now, and neither should you. And I wish we spent more time on like the richness of people comes from the immediacy of what you do while you're with them, not with the, if you and I were to define our relationship on our last podcast and what we did with our lives between now and then, we'd be pretty shallow people. The richness of this conversation is what defines us.
Right. Yeah. Are there any, I guess, let's say little reminders or notifications you have in your toolbox to,
Yeah.
I guess change routines, or do you even think about it, or do you just?
Oh, yeah, I've got a million little things. I've got, shortcuts to text people to tell them I'm thinking about them. Some of the more provocative social hacks that I use for relationships are the people I'm closest to are blocked on all social media and have been since, for the last 15 years. My spouse and I have never seen each other online. I have no idea what my spouse does online. I have no idea what music my spouse listens to, what friends, what conversation. I don't know. My closest friends, the people I've known for the longest time, are not connected to me online. Uh, they wanted to, for the longest time, but I said no. Um, and then I also don't connect to people online, so I only connect to ideas. So like I'll follow, you know, groups on Facebook or on LinkedIn. I'll only connect to someone in a business way if I've actually met them. It's just where I am. And I think that while it sounds weird, what you'll find is, again, with technology, it's become way too easy to consume another person's life as if they're content. Somewhere between 2012 and 2015, people disconnected social relationships and combined it with passive consumption. And social relationships require synchronous conversations like we're having now, right? This podcast would be completely different if you text me yesterday and I'd answer a question today, and then yesterday you text me a question and I answer it, right? It doesn't work. But we expect our relationships to work when we have asynchronous communication. So I think that's a biggie. I loved reminders on my phone for the longest time, reach out to so and so. One of my favorite kind of time plus social hacks is putting a calendar appointment in the future for yourself, and reminding yourself, like, hey, today is 2028. You had a podcast 63, and now you're having podcast whatever 100 and some. You'll probably be on podcast 250. So make sure you reach out. And what's crazy is you'll forget that appointment's there, and by the time it comes, it's kind of this weird synchronicity that happens. Synchronicity is another time thing you can do.
Mm,
Working with mindfulness and awareness, where you're like, oh, it's just, people like it's a coincidence. No, not usually not. Usually I had some hand in it. But does that make sense? So there's just like some simple hacks that I think,
mhm.
reminders, future appointments, and then not
Yeah.
connecting to people you actually care about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
What about your routines? So I've like experimented with a little bit over the last few months. That I live a very routine lifestyle. That I write a lot. I make a lot of videos. Work a lot, etc. And I've tried to, okay, on some days I'm just gonna break it up. I'm gonna do something different and follow a different routine. And it does, in some ways feel like time goes by slower, because of it's a new thing. We talked about the energy efficiency, so your brain is forced to exert more energy again to pay attention to the task that you're doing. So are you doing anything something like that, that you just, I don't know,
I
let's
mean,
say you work?
yeah, it's a old calendar productivity hack, but I've time blocked my life for a long time where there's certain periods of time where I do things during the day. You know, because my life in the system that I shared with you earlier is really driven by this sense of values. So these core values: health, home, service, work, finances. Um, I, I automatically think about those, when I'm doing something. So while my time is a lot looser and less structured than it used to be, I'm also at an age where I can be. I don't have to be at a specific job at a specific time. Um, and I'll make time in the future for something that's very family focused or something that's very community focused. A lot of the work that I get hired to do in the last 5 years is really about taking a lot of these technologies and focusing them on large groups of people. And when I'm doing, communities, cities, states, counties, we have. Um, But I haven't done any like break the routine habits or experiments in a long time. I used to do a lot of those because obviously breaking a routine, especially if it's a bad habit, is super important. Um, I do I do commend you for doing it. I still can't get over how much different you sound now than 2018 when I was explaining to you kind of time and time hacking, and I almost felt he must think I'm crazy. And now to hear you talk about it as if it's so normal, it's like it makes me kind of happy.
Mm.
Sorry, I don't
Yeah.
mean to make this about you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think these things become more aware of them as you get older. Myself as well.
How
I'm
old are you now?
31.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. So yeah, we
Yeah.
had our first conversation 7 years ago. I was 24 back then. So yeah, I'm not saying I'm like old, but I'm 7 years older, so my perception of the world has changed quite a lot. They say your brain fully matures when you're 25, so maybe there's
Yeah,
been like
and
some
then
sort of
your
a
late 20s, you cross the bridge I call it the psychosis bridge, where, like, if you haven't become psychotic by your late 20s, early 30s, you're fine, all right?
mm,
Most schizophrenia and, dissociation happens in that few things. But
right.
everything specifically for you, if you spent 7 years and you'd been doing your podcast at that point before I even met you, I was episode
I just
60.
started. It was like maybe a few months when I started.
Yeah. So, you also have just a world of experience of talking about things that most people, I think a lot of people don't even consider.
Mm.
So, I think you're probably aging, in a level of wisdom faster than maybe your peers, which can be lonely, I would think.
Right. Well, I'm married, so it's good to yeah. So
Okay.
it's gonna be or it's not a like obstacle in the
Oh,
sense.
good. Yeah. Oh, good. Well, hopefully your spouse keeps you grounded, and because I know that one of the things that I did when I got married in 2018, I got married in February of 2018, was I made sure that I allowed my spouse's point of view, which is completely different than mine, you know,
Mhm.
undocumented, unplanned, unmanaged, unexamined, all of those things. You know, I- it's best if you're someone who likes these things to have a chaos agent
Mm.
at close at hand.
Right. Yeah.
That can be a puppy if you don't have a partner. A puppy is a
Mm.
good chaos agent.
Yeah, my wife, we have similar lifestyles that we're both into health and longevity, but we do have a puppy as well, so that's the the
That's
chaos
the
agent
chaos agent.
right now.
Yeah.
Um, what about you? So how has your perception of time changed as you're, reaching your 60s now?
Um. Well, first, I mean, it's gonna sound completely like out there, but I'm really struggle with the fact that people who are my age don't look like me.
Mhm.
So I'll meet people in their late 40s and 50s, definitely in their 60s, who just look so old. So I think it's a little bit weird for me to function in a world where I have to be biologically 60, but I sound and look 20 or 25 years younger than I am. Um, it almost is disassociative at times because I don't know how to relate to those people. Because when I look at them, my mind starts thinking, treat them like an old person.
Mm,
It's just the way I was raised. I mean, it's not
right.
anything, I hate to say I'm not being rude. Um, but then I have to go, wait a minute, that's me. So I mean,
Mhm.
I think, when you think about time perception, I have to deal with that. So one of the things I do, and it's gonna sound just out there, is I do practice being an old person. So I'll ask for help, like at the grocery store, "Can you put these things in my vehicle or help me lift something?"
Mm.
I'll ask for all sorts of assistance. "Can you read something for me that" it's just I could probably read it if I just, put my glasses on and, like, took a second. Um, and I've long maintained that practicing being old helps you become old. That if you
Mhm.
just wake up one day and say, "Why can't I lift this amount of weights? Why can't I go out and run
Yeah.
this mile? Why am I not as virile in bed?" All of the things that come with aging, right? It'll probably kill you, right? So,
Mhm.
I think that's been super important for me, to just make sure I allow myself to be as old as I am, regardless of how I feel and look. Uh, because a lot of people also have this age bias, like where you can't be old, you can't act old. And again, nothing kills you faster than self-judgment. So for me, like not judging myself, because listen, no matter how well I treat myself, no matter how mindful I am, no matter how good my diet is, and no matter how strong I am, I will age. It is just part of life, right?
Mm,
So, getting okay with aging has been a really super important thing for me for about 5 years.
mhm,
Um, and then also, understanding death and thinking about what does that look like and how do I deal with it? Because again, I have the most loving spouse, but at the end of the day, I have to die and I have to die alone, which means I have to really be okay with my mind, right? And it took me a long time to realize that I will die young in my brain.
mm,
I thought at some point I would be an old man. I'm sure at some point you would feel 30. Unfortunately, you're never going to feel 30. You're never going to feel 41. You're never going to feel 51, right? It's just not, it doesn't happen. Our brain is our brain for a reason. And if you're under some illusion that one day you'll be a grown up, you won't. So
mm.
get okay with that thing you call you and you'll be
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, and a lot of, let's say, suffering and I mean, that's different from pain, but suffering is a lot of, you know, like a mental framework as well, the
Yeah.
perception thing
Yeah.
that you can suffer.
In Buddhism, we call it dukkha.
Mm,
So dukkha, pain of life is dukkha in Buddhism and Sanskrit, and it comes from striving or wanting, needing,
right.
and wanting, needing, striving comes from not living non-judgmentally moment by moment, which is the definition of mindfulness. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the strangest thing that's like is, and this sounds so much fun. I'm gonna love saying this, but how fast I can just bring an outrageous amount of clarity to a situation. I work with like huge cities, right? And all of a sudden there'll be all these people with all this stuff. Like, what about this? What about this? And I'll just like drop some like crazy nugget. Like, and I don't know where it comes from, but I do think it has to be practicing working with myself. Don't you think? I mean, I do think there's some type of almost environmental control that comes with some some level of awareness that almost seems otherworldly.
Mm,
I think Steve Jobs in some ways had the ability to shift time and shift perception. A lot of stagecraft is energy, working with a crowd. I'm sure you've done a bunch of talks by now, right? Right. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm makes me excited for like, what does life even look like in the future if this continues to grow at the same rate that it's been growing?
yeah.
Do I get a wizard's robe at some point?
Yeah. Um, what about, do you think like some technology would be able to? So one idea I've had is that, okay, maybe in a few decades or 50 years or something, there's gonna be, VR that is, indistinguishable from reality, and in the VR, obviously you can just control how fast the time goes by. So you can
Yeah.
be like 1 minute inside some sort of a VR simulation, which in the real world, as we call it, where we are right now, it would be only 1 minute, but in the VR, it's gonna be 500 years, for example. So
I
you
think
can,
be able to do that sooner than that, probably just with uh once we get better understanding sleep.
mm,
Because you can have a lot of time happen in or at least what you think in a dream. So
yeah,
you know, I don't know. I believe that, and I'm sure you've had a lot of sleep hackers on, and a lot of dream hackers. I mean, based on what your show talks about, I'm sure you've had that. So I'm sure
yeah,
VR. I think they'll be able to do that. But again, you'd also have to probably the VR would have to be so immersive in a way that it almost took away your senses. So I'm not sure how that would work. But
mhm.
yeah, I like where you're going with that.
Yeah, so maybe so there's a lot of people who are interested in life extension and this longevity escape velocity to make people live hundreds of years and to reach immortality even. So maybe maybe part of the answer is just being in a VR that feels like immortality, but in the VR it's let's say 1 year. In the real world it's a 1 year, but in the
Yeah.
VR it's the
That's where
immortality.
some longevity people in me schism. I don't think death is optional. I think death is required to remain
Right, right.
working. I want it. I'm pro-death. I moved to a state where death is actually assisted. If at end of life,
Mm,
we also allow you to have green burial, so we don't have a cremation. But no, I think maybe I'm a little bit different than biohackers and some longevity people because unlike Brian Johnson, I don't think death is a disease that needs to be cured. I think that is a disease. You know,
Right.
uh, and there's something about time perception is hinged on mortality.
Mm. Yeah.
So I'll just leave that there without getting too ugly about people who believe that dying is a mistake.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we can, discuss
That's a
the
good debate.
yeah, the ethical implications of that, but as a like just the pure physics of it. To
Yeah, no, and no, that's where I think I was going with that. I'm sorry, I got off track. Yeah, I don't know. I also think, I don't even know what this would look like, but chemically, I'm sure we're going to be able to do things with time and time perception. We already do. I mean,
mm,
with you know drugs for different neuropathologies within whether you've got ADHD or PTSD, we're already working with some of that. So, I mean, that'll be
mm,
really interesting. I kind of like the fact that I might have went the more natural route with my time perception. I just,
yeah,
but it felt like I was on drugs sometimes, especially after like 5, 6, 7 day retreats where you don't speak or look at anyone. It's like, oh my gosh, like what happened? I don't even know. You know, I remember one time I came home from a 10 day retreat, and it was like an hour ride from Spirit Rock back into San Francisco. And a friend took me to their house to stay for a couple days so I could come back into life. Right. Because we've
mhm,
not spoken for 10 days, not wrote, not had a watch, don't have time, don't have, just your yogi job. And the rest of the time you're meditating. And I remember standing in my friend's kitchen trying to open a jar, and I couldn't remember how jars worked. I couldn't remember to hold it and twist. I
yeah,
had been so detached from like my reality for so long. And my friend said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I don't know what to do with this." And they said, it's just charged to open. I'm like, I can't remember how that works. It was just so disassociative in that moment. And I'm like, wow, to be that far from to be, or I guess that inside, and then to be that aware that you don't know how to do something. But even then I had to like slowly go out, like go outside for an hour or two and see people just doing regular things. And I didn't
mm,
even know how to speak for the first 30 minutes after I got picked up. And my friend who'd done a bunch of retreats at the time said, "This is okay. You'll be fine."
mm,
Have you
yeah.
done any long retreats?
I haven't done any silent retreats or something like that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's but it's, yeah, for sure, like very interesting because it's a sense and sounds and speaking, they change our perception of the world, and if you artificially lose it by voluntarily abstaining from it, then imagine if you could just if you never smelled anything, for 10 days you didn't smell anything, your perception of the world would be quite different, I think.
You brought up something really cool. When I was a teenager in the 80s, there was I have it on the shelf. Oh, if you can see it. Let me see if it's back here somewhere. See it. It's on this side. It's real small. See these little cans right here?
Yeah.
So this was called Moroccan Spice. And they sold this at a place called Evelyn and Crabtree, which is a European, apothecary that we had here in the United States in malls in the 80s. I think they might even still be around. Long story short, I used to buy this Moroccan Spice as a teenager and just put it in my pillows in my room, spray it in the air. I was one of those weird kids that like their bedroom. Every kid I think is like this to some extent, but my bedroom was like a sanctuary. Like didn't look like the rest of the house. The lighting was different. I had like strange music playing all the time. Um, but I still to this day I have an eBay alert, and when I find this spray, I'll buy it. So you're really expensive. And then what I love to do is just randomly every now and then just spray it in the air and be able to like it takes me so quickly back to being a teenager in my room. I know it's kind of a weird thing, but find some scent that you grew up with that's hard to find, acquire it and time travel. It's the coolest thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, looking at old photos, I guess, also is one way of doing that.
Especially nowadays, because old photos are such high resolution. My old photos had to be scanned.
Mm. Yeah. Um, we can start wrapping up, but what are some things people, can do on a daily basis to, let's say, make technology better for them in terms of, the perception of time plus their mental health and just quality of life? What kind of small things that people can do?
Gosh, small things. I think depending on if you're on iPhone or Android, they each call it something different, but work with focus modes on your phone. So focus modes allow you to replace icons and wallpapers and just all the settings with a quick switch. So you can have like a work mode or a home mode, work with that. I think that's like one of these fun things because it allows you to switch context. And a lot of our lives is dictated by how our phone is talking to us. A lot of people use that for what I would call productivity hacking, but it's great for just mind hacking. Count ups and countdowns. There's a million apps for that for your computer, for your phone. Setting those, working with them, watching them, setting one, another fun one. Make an appointment with yourself whenever you're listening to this podcast for 1 year from today, right? And write yourself a note in your calendar. I promise whatever you write, it will come true. So make sure you write something good. But I think most importantly, just, I don't know, be okay with not being okay. I mean, I've spent my entire life, wondering what happiness looked like, why I was so fucking happy I couldn't see straight. And it wasn't until I said, okay, I have to be okay with wherever I am, however I am, and just show up for that. It was kind of the biggest hack in the world. And that didn't take a lot of technology.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, those
So,
are yeah, technology can be useful and it can be very helpful, but you can also get lost in it. So it
yeah,
comes down to how you use it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I try to be a good grandpa cyborg.
Yeah. Um, well, yeah, it was great to talk with you. Before asking my last question, where can people learn more about you and your work?
My gosh. I don't do much online anymore. When I speak nowadays, it's usually to talk about this type of thing in community at the community level. But just, chrisdancy.com is my website. I don't do a lot on social media, so like, you're not gonna find a bunch of biohacks. I have a YouTube, but it's usually just like me talking about something I'm working on. So I mean, most of the times I do stuff, it's through interviews like this. Um, it's hard because like I'm an old cyborg, no one wants to talk to old cyborgs anymore.
Need to get a new updated
A new
exoskeleton and
cyborg? Yeah, they really do. But it's been good. I've had a really good life, and I'm really proud of me.
mm. Well, it was yeah, great. We'll put the links in the show notes. My last question is, what's this one piece of advice or habit that you wish you adopted sooner?
Don't be afraid to find new friends. That's it. Like, like I was talking about earlier, just don't be afraid to ask people to get out of your life or just stop dealing with people.
Mm,
For so long, I kept people in my life who were more interested in being me than being with me. And that's, you never get a second. You can't get that time back from people who wanna be you. They have no desire to
right.
be with you.
Yeah, that's yeah, insightful. And friends are yeah quite important
Yeah.
as well.
Don't be afraid to cycle them. Well, so good seeing you. I appreciate you having me on again.
Yeah, it was great to talk.
I'm
And
gonna take the old show, and I'm gonna take this show, and I'm gonna pull the text out of them and compare and see how I've grown. I'll send you the link when I'm done.
all right, sounds good. Well, thanks for coming, and I'll see you around.
Thanks.